Thank you for joining us today for Audinate's seminar on digital audio networking. My name is Lee Ellison, and I'm the CEO of Audinate. We appreciate all of you taking the time out of your schedules to learn more about Audinate and our advanced networking solutions. At Audinate, we've spent an enormous amount of research and development efforts, both in the area of developing high-performance audio networking capabilities, as well as how we can make digital networking easy and flexible to install, configure, and maintain. Joining me today on the webinar is Aidan Williams, our co-founder and CTO of Audinate, as well as Chris Ware, our Vice President of Engineering. During this webinar, we will be providing you with a brief overview of Dante, which is Audinate's next-generation solution for media networking. During this time, we will be discussing the benefits of digital networking, as well as review some of the challenges our customers have incurred with earlier implementations of legacy digital networking systems. We also are pleased to have Greg Lukens joining us today on our webinar, who comes from Washington Professional Systems. And Greg will be discussing his own use case of a complex installation he used with Dante incorporated into it. Towards the latter part of the webinar, we'll show a real-time demonstration of Dante's capabilities and its ease of use. We will also be discussing various factors and tips to consider as you design and deploy digital networks. During today's webinar, you will be able to forward questions by chat text to our moderator, and at the end of the webinar, we will be addressing as many of these questions as time permits. First, I'd like to give you a little bit of background about Audinate and our history. While many companies have approached networking from the audio world, Audinate developed its Dante networking as a media solution from a core team of digital networking experts. Our origins began in 2004, where a group of leading networking experts joined NICTA in Australia. NICTA is Australia's Information and Communications Technology Centre of Excellence, which is in the business of doing advanced research and commercialization of new technologies. At Audinate, we have locations in both Sydney, Australia, as well as Portland, Oregon, in the United States. And to date, we've been able to license 25 manufacturers who have moved forward to incorporate our technology into their AV products. And these include the likes of Dolby, LabGruppen, ASL, Whirlwind, XTA, MC², for example, who have commercial products available today, as well as many others who will be launching their Dante-enabled products in the next several months. While some networking technologies are better suited for specific market segments, we've designed Dante to ensure it meets the performance demands across all market segments, including professional live sound, installed audiovisual systems, and systems for the broadcast market. We also now have use cases in cinema. Earlier this week, we have issued a press release regarding how Dante was used at the world premiere of the movie Star Trek, which was an all-digital experience at the Sydney Opera House. Now, I'd like to turn over the webinar to Aidan Williams, our CTO, who will speak to you in more detail about Dante. Aidan?
I'd like to begin by talking a little about trends in installed audio and in audio systems in general. Firstly, as each year goes by, higher performance is expected of audio systems. This is a fairly obvious point to make, but over time, AV systems are expected to have more channels, have lower latency, higher audio quality, and tighter synchronization. And this is, of course, true of networking technologies as well. At the same time, systems are becoming larger and more complex. There are more boxes, lots more channels, and more bandwidth to manage. The designers and users of AV systems are being required to do more, to understand more, and to manage increasingly large systems. As AV systems become larger, they are less likely to remain static, so they constantly change and evolve. Requirements change over the lifetime of an AV system. Equipment gets moved around and reconfigured, and nobody is surprised when new equipment is added to an existing system. So flexibility is increasingly important, and networking technologies like Dante offer the promise of great flexibility as well as having high performance. Another ongoing trend is the convergence of AV and IT networks. And the goal here is to increase the flexibility and performance of AV systems whilst at the same time saving costs. Savings come initially from using the same equipment or hardware that IT systems use. So for example, there are any number of digital snakes that reuse Cat5 cabling, but you can also reuse things like Ethernet switches as well, and there's quite a few networking technologies that do that. Greater savings, however, come from deploying AV and IT systems on a common infrastructure, and this is the sort of thing that has been very successful in the voice over IP world. Significant savings also accrue from leveraging the IT knowledge that is readily available from the everyday use of IP networks that are the bread and butter of home and office networking. So if we take a look at existing audio networking solutions, there are various limitations which complicate their use in large AV systems. Firstly, it is common to run separate and control audio networks. Although many audio networking technologies support a kind of tunneling of control data through the audio network, they typically don't allow one or more ordinary PCs running control software, for example, to share the audio network without some sort of expensive plug-in hardware card. Unfortunately, separate control and audio networks add cost, both in terms of hardware costs and also in terms of management and configuration costs. So typically 1.5 to 2 times more switch ports are needed for each audio device than is necessary if you have separated control and audio networks. So these ports, these network ports, can be provided for with a separate Ethernet switch hardware, so that adds cost. Or you can use higher density network switches, so switches with more ports on them, and then pay somebody with IT skills to configure those switch ports into what are called virtual LANs or VLANs. The various limitations of legacy technologies lead to configuration headaches. So for example, if you have a 100 megabit per second only link capacity, that leads to complicated workarounds as channel counts increase in the network. So in such a system, large-scale AV systems can only be created by artificially dividing the network into 100 megabit per second chunks, either with switch hardware or yet more VLANs. Connecting between boxes that are in these separate, isolated 100 megabit per second VLAN chunks is typically done in the audio domain, not in the networking domain. And so that creates additional routing complexity, audio routing complexity that isn't really needed. If you want to make changes in a system that's built like that, even changes which would on the face of it appear simple, extensive knowledge of the system details, the specific system details of that install is needed, and that costs. And finally, if you're stuck with 100 megabit per second, it also means that you can't exploit the low latency performance benefits of technologies like gigabit Ethernet. In general, legacy technologies have typically built directly on top of Ethernet in a proprietary way and have required fairly extensive training. The various technologies have required the designer or the integrator to come to grips with the details of a protocol which doesn't look anything like the IP networking that they would be familiar with from their home or office network. Ironically, the control protocols used by most AV equipment are usually based on IP, so two networks, an IP network and a non-IP network, end up being built. In the end, the complications add up to increased costs in installation, debugging, and ongoing management. So what is Dante? Dante has been designed from the ground up to be a flexible, next-generation media networking system which exploits to the maximum the performance available in switched networks. So what is Dante? Dante has been designed from the ground up to be a flexible, next-generation media networking system which exploits to the maximum the performance available in today's switched networks. Dante offers a complete set of components needed for a comprehensive audio networking solution, including simple service discovery and label-based signal routing, unicast, multicast, and redundant audio transport. Various signal routing applications and software APIs that can be used by manufacturers or even integrators to control Dante audio routing in devices. And also audio software interfacing via the Dante virtual sound card for the PC and Mac platforms. The performance, scalability, and ease of use of Dante simplifies installation and reduces the cost of ownership of AV systems. So in short, Dante delivers a complete, no-hassle, self-configuring, plug-and-play digital audio network solution. Dante offers a number of benefits and features to designers of networked AV systems. In terms of performance, Dante offers sample-accurate playback synchronization and high-quality clocking throughout the network. Playback is synchronized even between devices separated by multiple switch hops. Dante also offers the lowest latency available from any networking technology on the market today. It offers deterministic latency throughout the network and can support mixed bit depths and mixed sample rates simultaneously on the network. So in a Dante network, you can have a 44.1 kilohertz device and a 96 kilohertz device sharing the same network. Dante also offers increased scalability. A network using Dante is limited by the underlying networking technologies, not by the Dante protocol itself. So Dante scales up from 100 megabits to 1 gigabit per second through to 10 gigabit per second and beyond, with the corresponding increase in capacity and performance. You can mix and match different link speeds in the same network, and lower speed links like 100 megabit per second links naturally aggregate into higher speed links, like gigabit links, as they do in normal IT networks. This scalability makes it possible to design networks which are easy to manage. A single network can support hundreds or even thousands of channels without needing to be broken up into VLANs, and this eliminates a major cause of complexity when making changes or additions. Dante also offers simple device discovery and signal routing using meaningful labels, and this reduces configuration effort and errors, which becomes increasingly important as systems become more complex. Dante also offers reduced costs and complexity. Dante's architecture is built on standard internet protocols, and it leverages the widespread skills and integrates smoothly into managed IT network infrastructure. Dante also uses off-the-shelf network equipment, so Ethernet switches, and that gives it the ability to exploit the ever-improving price-performance characteristics of IT equipment. As we've been saying, Dante supports a single network for audio, control and monitoring, and that gives you less things to manage and configure in AV systems. Finally, a key feature, reducing the cost and complexity of the management of Dante networks, is what we call the Zen technology, and this offers automatic discovery and simple signal routing. So how does Dante make the installation of networks easy? The first step is to make it really easy to discover Dante devices connected to a network. You plug the devices in and turn them on, and they automatically become visible to a signal routing application like the Dante controller. However, before communicating on the network, each device must correctly configure various networking parameters. Dante does this automatically so that the user doesn't ever have to deal with IP addresses or other pieces of arcanery to get the network up and running. Automatic configuration ensures that addresses don't conflict, which is always a potential hard-to-debug problem when manually configuring networks. A Dante network can be completely unmanaged, so a simple network of a few devices connected to a switch will automatically configure itself without needing any kind of IT infrastructure, like a DNS or DHCP server, and also without needing manual entry of device IDs or addresses. Most importantly, Dante supports the use of descriptive textual labels for devices and signals, and makes signal routing really easy to use. The use of meaningful labels makes configuration simpler and less error-prone. You don't need to remember to enter channel numbers and cryptic addresses when setting up routing. Routing audio channels across the network looks the same to the user, regardless of whether the underlying transport is redundant or whether it's using unicast or multicast. Zen handles all the details of setting up the packet flows between the boxes throughout the network. As systems become larger and involve more signals, simplicity of configuration is critically important to the installation and ongoing management of AV systems. Zen is designed to provide just that simplicity. The combination of scalability, elimination of network configuration complexity, and easy-to-use signal routing means that Dante delivers true plug-and-play networking. In addition to receiving audio signals, real AV devices have additional features and functions which need to be configured or controlled. And so Dante offers a suite of control and monitoring functionality which manufacturers can incorporate into their equipment and or control software running on PCs or Macs. So Dante control and monitoring is again based on IP protocols, and it runs through the same single network port as the audio. So Dante control and monitoring offers a single network for audio control and monitoring, automatic discovery of controllable devices with their meaningful labels. It offers audio channel metering, notification of various changes on devices. So for example, if the audio routing changes, notification of change in clockmaster in the network or changes in addresses. It also offers various performance statistics such as missing packets, dropped samples, error rates, bandwidth in use on each individual port on the device. And finally, it offers a simple way that manufacturers can provide protocol-specific or device-specific extensions to enable them to put their own functionality into devices. Another advantage of Dante is that it can be implemented entirely in software, which allows it to run on PC and Mac computer systems. The Dante Virtual Sound Card allows a PC or a Mac to be part of a Dante network using the built-in Ethernet interface. It appears as a standard ASIO or core audio sound card to audio applications, and it turns your audio applications into networked audio applications. DVS enables recording, playback, and processing of networked digital audio with no loss of quality using your favourite computer-based programs. The Dante Virtual Sound Card opens up lots of possibilities for AV systems involving PC equipment and or PC audio software. So some of those applications include recording applications where you're recording lots of tracks straight from the audio network, and these might be in a house of worship environment. If you're recording live events, conferences or corporate events, and courtroom or government kinds of proceedings. Obviously, you can also do recording in production and recording studios, but one interesting application is the possibility of using PC playback for things like background music or announcements in an installed audio system.